Welcome to the TOEFL listening section. In this part, you will hear one or more conversations in an academic or campus context, such as a discussion between a student and a professor, or between two students. You may take notes while listening. Listen to part of a conversation. You will hear it only once, so listen carefully. After the conversation, you will answer questions about what you heard. Some questions will ask you about main ideas and details. Others will ask about implied meaning, speaker attitude, or how ideas relate to one another. Use both what is stated and what is implied to answer.
Good afternoon, Dr. Morales. Thank you for meeting me during office hours.
Good afternoon, Mark. Tell me about your project idea on animal communication systems.
I want to compare signaling complexity across different taxa. I am thinking about bees, primates, and electric fish, and how they structure signals to convey information.
That is a broad but rich topic. When you say signaling complexity, what aspects do you want to measure?
I was thinking of modality, for example visual versus acoustic versus chemical signals. And then whether signals are combinatorial or referential. Also how receivers interpret them.
Those are good dimensions. Modalities matter because sensory systems differ across species. For instance, honeybees use a waggle dance that is primarily visual and tactile to communicate distance and direction to a food source.
Right. The waggle dance encodes vector information through angle and duration. That seems more symbolic than simple graded calls.
Exactly. Contrast that with vervet monkey alarm calls, which are often described as referential, because different calls elicit distinct predator-specific responses.
So the bees have a spatial referential signal, and vervet monkeys have predator referential calls. Are those cases of semantic communication in animals?
They are often called referential signals, yes. When I said that alarm calls in vervet monkeys are referential, I meant that the calls convey specific information about the type of predator.
I see. That clarifies referential. What about electric fish? They communicate with changes in their electric field, right?
Yes. Weakly electric fish modulate electric organ discharges to signal species identity, sex, and even motivational state. Their modality is electrical, which humans cannot perceive directly without equipment.
That highlights how studies need appropriate sensors. For acoustic studies we use spectrograms. For electric fish we need electrodes.
Correct. And experimental methods vary. Playback experiments are powerful for testing receiver responses. You can play a recorded call and observe behavior to infer meaning.
Would playback work for multimodal signals where visual and acoustic cues combine?
Yes, but you must design controlled multimodal playbacks. Present the acoustic component alone, the visual alone, and both together. That lets you see whether the signals are redundant or provide complementary information.
I am also curious about deceptive signaling. Do animals intentionally deceive?
Deception occurs, but it often depends on the costs and benefits. Some species produce false alarm calls to distract others and steal food. But if deception becomes common, receivers evolve skepticism, and signals lose reliability.
So honesty of signals is maintained by costs or by social enforcement mechanisms?
Yes. The handicap principle explains how costly signals remain honest. Ritualization is another process where movements or cues become stereotyped into signals through selection.
Can we measure informational content quantitatively across systems?
We can use information theory metrics to estimate entropy and redundancy in signals. For example, birdsong sequences sometimes show combinatorial syntax, reducing uncertainty about meaning when elements are combined.
Do you have a concrete example of combinatorial structure in non-human species?
Some songbirds arrange motifs in predictable sequences. Also, certain primate calls can be combined in ways that alter meaning. Dolphins produce signature whistles that function like names and can be combined with other sounds.
That is fascinating. For my comparative study, should I focus on a few systems or attempt a broader taxonomic survey?
For a graduate project, a focused comparative study across 3 systems is better. Pick systems that contrast modalities and social complexity. Honeybees for multimodal dance and odor cues, vervet monkeys for referential alarm calls, and electric fish for an uncommon modality.
What about field versus lab work? Some systems are easier in the lab.
Field data provides ecological validity, but lab or captive studies allow controlled manipulations. A mixed approach would strengthen your conclusions. Use field observations to identify natural signal use and lab playbacks to test receiver interpretation.
I want to include a section on eavesdropping and noise. How environmental noise influences signal design seems important.
Eavesdropping by predators or competitors can shape signal evolution. In noisy habitats, animals may shift modality or increase redundancy to ensure the message gets through.
This is a lot to include. For methods, I plan acoustic analysis, behavioral assays, and a literature meta-analysis of referential signaling.
That sounds solid. Make sure your literature meta-analysis defines criteria for referentiality and complexity. Also include ethical considerations, especially for playback experiments that could influence survival behaviors.
Thank you. One last question. How should I present comparative results so they are accessible to readers who are not specialists in animal communication?
Use clear schematics that show modality, information content, and costs for each system. Include specific examples that readers can relate to, like the waggle dance encoding distance and vervet calls signaling predator type. That helps translate technical metrics into understandable concepts.
Great. I will draft a proposal with those 3 systems and the methods we discussed, and send it to you next week.
I look forward to reading it. Good work. And remember to cite primary experimental studies for each example.
Listen again to part of the conversation, then answer the question.
When I said that alarm calls in vervet monkeys are referential, I meant that the calls convey specific information about the type of predator.
This concludes the conversation portion. For more TOEFL practice tests and study materials, visit Spinta.org.